Hello my friends, welcome back to another video. I'm Melanie with Melanie Smith Stamps, and today we're playing with the Sweet Jasmine collection from Altenew. This is the stamp set. It has a coordinating beautiful better press set and the coordinating die that works with both. There is a stencil set, and the stencil set works with the 3D embossing folder, the stamp set, and the better press. So it's a very functional suite of products here, but today our focus is the 3D embossing folder. I thought we would get a little inky and play with some watercolor powders. This is something I just love to do when I want to just relax and play with color. I'm just going to spray down a piece of watercolor paper and just get out a couple of my watercolor powders and just let the water flow. Now this one here is a Nuvo color. It's called Lilac Waterfall. These are just old powders from my stash. This one here is a Brusho powder. It's called Prussian Blue, I believe. And it's a little more intense, and it doesn't have an actual like powder air, like openings. So I just use a little tiny spoon that I got from a friend of mine and use it to get the powder out of the container. Just be careful not to spill the container. Ask me how I know. I have done that on occasion. So I'm just spraying and moving, and I probably should have stopped, before too long. And I did think and start heating, but there's no right or wrong with these techniques. You just can keep adding and drying and adding and drying to your little heart's content. And I did that for a while here on this panel, and it's just a lot of fun. Every time you move it, it changes. So as you dry it, it becomes permanent. So you can add it, and if you get it wet again though, it reactivates because it is actually watercolor. So the heating tool is your friend. And see, I'm just testing it out. I want to get those edges though colored. I don't like a lot of white space. I want this to be a fully colored panel if I can possibly make it one. So that's the look I'm going for. We are actually going to 3D emboss this piece of paper when we're all done and this is all dry. So that's the look I'm going for. On this panel, I'm actually wanting it a little lighter, so I'm adding some extra water. My first panel, which I'll show you later in the video, I used these same two colors and I went darker. So my hopes was a comparison to see what it would look like a little lighter compared to my darker panel, because we're going to be adding something to this panel and I was curious on how the reactions would be. And I apologize for being a little lower on the screen here, but I am just doing the same exact thing. I'm spraying it down, I'm moving it around, just kind of trying to get that big blue blob kind of is what I'm doing, trying to get it to move around so it's not so evident in one place. And that's what I'm working on. But, there's no right or wrong here. I'm adding a little bit more light right now, and then I'm going to get that wet as well. And I'm just, adding light here and water here and just moving it around to my heart's content. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch the movement. And like I said, there's no right or wrong. You can overdo it, you can underdo it. It's, it's your paper, it's your project. And I just keep playing until I'm happy. And sometimes you're not even sure what it's going to look like until it actually dries. So you just have to trust the process. And I'm almost there now, just getting that final little corner, I believe. I'm just trying to get that white is what I'm trying to do. Yep, and I'm just filling it in with my finger because I want it white, the white to disappear. And that's what it took. It took me doing it myself. So here we go. I'm going to dry it all up, and then we will move on here shortly to the next step. But I just love this, and it's very shiny. Here you can see the shininess, And now we have our dried panel. So we're going to take the embossing folder, and like I said, this is a 3D embossing folder. Now you could emboss this and actually stencil it if you wanted to, but we're going to change it up because I just wanted to try something different. I'm always experimenting in my craft room, and sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. This may be something that's not up your alley, and if it isn't, that's okay. But it's just something different, and I like to bring different to the table. So that might be something that you change the colors on and you find out is fantastic for you. And it might be something you absolutely love the look in the final end. So let's just watch where it heads. So here's my embossing. It's very hard to see on the paper itself, which is why I went lighter. I was curious. So now we're going to play with some solar paste and lunar paste. Now, solar paste is a white paste, and when you put it on dark, it shows. But when you put it on lighter colors, it gives you a shift. So I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen when you put it on like a medium color. So while I was just playing, I was not sure what kind of reaction, if any, we would actually get. But I wanted to put the green on the leaves and the blue on the flower and just see what we would get in the end. So I do have a paintbrush here to get the little tiny details when needed, or to actually wipe up anything that might get on the background. So I use my finger tool on the larger areas, and I use my paintbrush on the smaller areas. And actually here I make a mistake, and I actually paint one of the leaves blue. So you see that bottom one, that's actually a leaf. I fix that in the end, and I go over it with the green. But did you see the shift? The shift in color is what I thought was fascinating. It did actually give us a more intense blue where I added the blue of the solar paste. So now I'm coming in and doing the little buds. The buds are half blue, half green. So there was no way I was going to get that done with my finger. So I'm definitely using the paintbrush now. One thing that you do want to remember with solar paste is when it's dry, it's pretty permanent. So you want to definitely keep it moist and keep it moving. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Look at that. You can see the blue and the green. But you want to keep it moist and you want to wash it as soon as you're done. So like with this paintbrush, for instance, as soon as I'm done using it, I need to moisten that tip and wash that paste out of my bristles. You don't want it to dry on your bristles. You don't want it to dry on your tools and your surfaces and stuff. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're using it. It's not that it can't come off, it's just that it's very difficult to get it off. It is a water-based product, but it's a stubborn product. So just wash it when it's moist and fresh, and it comes right off. So I'm just filling in those little tiny areas that are florals and getting the other areas that are green. And then I just pretty much do most of the rest of it with the paintbrush. It just was more comfortable doing it this way. And look, I'm just using the paste that's in the lid. I'm not even going into the jar. You use very little. It just needs to be a light film over the area that you're doing. And I keep shifting the paper back and forth because it's easier to see in the lights. I've got bright studio lights, so I'm shifting it so I can see where I've colored and where I haven't. And I love the way it turned out. It's not super in your face obvious, but the recipient, and with them, I actually have them sitting here finished in front of me, and they're definitely noticeable, and more noticeable in person than on the screen. So it's definitely something I would play around with if you kind of like the idea of this magical shift of color. That's what I would explain it as. And these two colors, the purple and the blue together, it's this mythical, magical like feel, dreamy feel. And then you add these shifts of color on top, and it's just fun. It's just really, really fun. I felt like an artist. So I had a really great time playing around with this. I've had a really fun week, actually. I've been doing a lot of different things in the craft room, and I've gotten a lot of good news. I can't share all of it with you right now, but I do have some good news coming in the future. I've got some news coming in November, towards the end of November. And then I'm going to be working again with Altenew in December. So be watching for that. That one I can share because I've already been on their team once before as a guest designer. So you guys know I work with them. So I'm excited to be back with them in December to share with all of you some new products. So I'm playing and playing here and getting those larger pieces now, and we're getting close to the end here. And I do use my finger on this last couple of petals that are a little farther away from the main images. But these little tiny pieces, it's just easier to use the paintbrush. So you got two options there, paintbrush or finger tool. Most of the time on projects I use my finger tool, but this was nice and relaxing just to paint it on. Nothing wrong with options, right? Something else about the solar paste too is it dries really fast. So you don't have to worry about like smudging it and, you know, it just moving around on you. It really does dry quickly, which is really nice. See, I'm wiping my brush there in the water and washing it immediately. That's what you need to do. You know, getting just a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and do those large petals there on the side to finish this off. I did get a little bit on the background there, but when you're using your finger tools, you can't expect perfection because that's the beauty of the speed that you're getting. You have to transfer one for the other, but look how pretty that is. Yeah, I'm using the water on the table there to clean my actual finger tool also. I'm using the water to actually clean some of the solar paste off that I got on the background there by using water on the background. Just another little tip for you. Sometimes that works as well, and it just cleans up your boo-boos since it is watercolor in the background. So there you go. Now we're going to take gold and we're going to come in and just lightly paint the centers of these gorgeous flowers. They have these very delicate centers, and I took my time here and just ever so lightly painted them, and they have these really detailed lines coming out from the stamens. So I was really careful, and this is a really small paintbrush, very detailed paintbrush. So I did that, and I'm doing both centers, and it just gave it a little solid pop there in the center of each. Then after we get these cards finished, we will actually be splattering them just a little bit with some gold as well, which will pull in these centers and make it a little more cohesive. So this was definitely a very enjoyable card to create. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this technique with me as we've made it. There we go. Look at there. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so we're going to clean up this and we'll switch over and work on the rest of our card. Just cleaning my brush first. You always got to clean up your mess before you move on. So there is that one. And there is the lighter one. So the one on the right is the darker that I made previously. And I did them in different orientations. So just to give you different point of view. So now I've gotten two card bases here, just regular A2 card bases. And I'm going to trim these down just a tad so we can have a little white showing. I thought that might be a nice way to brighten up the card just a little bit, is to add a little white on the outsides. So I'm just going to use my Tim Holtz trimmer here and just make that so we have that white border. See there? I'm going to do the same thing here, but you can see there as they lay next to each other how I got this one here that we created today, and I got it just a tad bit lighter, whereas the other one has more pronounced blues in it. and I like both of them, but the pronounced blue one, the one that is vertical, is actually more intense. And I was actually surprised about that, but I think it's because the colors are deeper underneath the solar paste, and the solar paste is reacting more with it. So, and while I'm thinking about that, yes, I wanted to make sure I was naming it correctly because I get solar paste and lunar paste mixed up. The solar paste is the white paste, and I have to remember solar. I want to call the lunar paste the white because when I think lunar, I think moon. But I'm wrong. I am so wrong. I am so backwards in so many ways. But that's a me thing. That's totally a me thing. So here I'm going to stamp our sentiments. I'm going to use two different ones from the Sweet Jasmine collection. And I'm going to just use regular stamp sets. It's something I don't use very often. I usually reach for my Better Press all the time, but I thought I'd be a little different today. I'm going to stamp these first two with the jet black. I wanted to show you the difference in the ink pads from Altenew. This is the jet black ink, and this is fresh dye ink. And I'm going to stamp this twice in my Misty. And I only grabbed my Misty because this is my card, my small Misty, my mini, and it's just so much easier on my desk. So when I'm doing just sentiments, this is what I grab. So I've got my Misty, and I've done that. Now I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to show you what obsidian pigment ink looks like. So I wanted to do a little comparison here so you could see the difference. This is the Altenew Obsidian Pigment Ink. And this ink is exceptionally crisp. So I wanted to show you the difference because when I stamped the other one twice, I didn't get nearly as crisp as stamping this one once. So that's something to think about. I don't know if you can tell in the pictures, but the obsidian pigment ink is much crisper, and I only had to stamp it once. So that's something else to think about. Now, on the downside, a pigment ink is going to smear. So it is best to either let it sit out for a little while or heat set it. So before die cutting, make sure you do one or the other just to play it safe, or you'll end up with a smeared sentiment. So it's just your preference. You can do it either way. One way may not be as clear or as dark, as crisp and dark, but it won't smear when you rub it. And the other way, you're going to get super crisp, super dark, but you need to treat it with some TLC right afterwards. And either hit it with the heat gun or just let it sit out for a little bit to let it dry. So I chose for the crisp, super dark sentiments, and that's what we're going with here today. So here are my metallic watercolor inks, or paints from Altenew, and I'm just going to use this gold here. I'm going to warm it up and prime it up here, and I sprayed it with the water bottle, my Mighty Mister, just to get everything wet. And I probably put too much water in there because it's taking me a little bit of time to get this out on the glass mat. And I'm going to use two paintbrushes, one to knock into and one to actually have the pigment on. And we're going to splatter little splatters on the card base. Now, I should have done this prior to putting it on the card base, but it didn't bother me to have little splatters. They're little splatters. They're not really big ones. So I was okay with it. And very little got on the actual edge. I think only one or two little tiny dots of gold, but I'm okay with it. It's artistic, let's just say. So, and it's me, right? You be you and enjoy your card making however makes you happy. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I just love that one. Now we're going to do the same exact thing here. And yes, you did just see me get the back of that card base. into the gold metallic ink. Yes, I did. So that was a boo-boo on me. And I will cut that card front off and attach it to another card base because I did get that ink on the back of that card. But you know what? The accidents happen. So there is that pretty little girl. And we will just attach this pretty sentiment onto the front of this one. And this one will be done as well. Now each of these sentiments I have added a second layer to the back of. Just a scrap layer using the die, as I call them, little blanks, and it just gives it a little extra dimension. And I could have added crystals as well, but I was happy with them with the splatters. So there we go. That's my favorite. And there's the lighter version. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, my friends.